Hi, Jim here, just dropping in before this week's episode to tell you about my latest movie, The Apocalypse Box. It's a horror film and I'd love for you to check it out. If you go to apocalypsebox.co.uk, you can find all the links on where you can watch the movie. Right, let's get on with this week's episode. Hi, Jim here, and you're listening to the Honest Filmmaker podcast. Career advice from people in the business. So, can you finance an indie feature film using cryptocurrency? Well, with lots of indie filmmakers out there struggling to raise finance, I wanted to find out the answer, so I sat down with filmmaker Stuart Daly. Stuart started as an actor working on big productions, and then he decided to learn everything about cryptocurrency so he could use that information to make the money to finance his feature film. Stuart did hours and hours research into blockchain and used the £2,000 overdraft to invest in digital assets in 2020. As a result, he made over $800,000 in less than 10 months for his film trust. The profit was then utilised to part finance a proof of concept for a feature film. As well as funding the film in a unique way, Stuart's also going after a different audience, what he deems the truth-seeking audience. And these are the sort of audiences online that are interested in all sorts of things. You can see it recently evidenced in the film The Sound of Freedom, the Mel Gibson film, which got a lot of online traction from this audience. So that was also interesting to find out about. Stuart's also just exec produced James McAvoy's directorial debut, California Schemin, due for release in 2026. Also, how he managed to get meetings with some big executives to pitch the project, his advice for pitching the project, and his plans for the future. Enjoy. So let's start at the beginning. Talk to me about how you got into filmmaking.
Wow. To condense into a nutshell, basically, so I'm a Scottish lad. I don't sound an asshole. I'm from Edinburgh. And, I went to Edinburgh University, got a master's in sports science, which I don't use at all, in sports management. And long story cut short, we migrate to London. And I got into like a headhunting role because, when you're 24, 25, everyone just wants to get experience. So anyway, once I did that for 2 years, and it was like Wolf of Wall Street carnage in the sales environment, which was a good sort of breeding ground for pitching films and stuff. I think my friend at the time said to me, "You love film, like why not act and try and do that?" Because I was never the actor at school and stuff. I was more into the rugby, the jock life. So I tried my luck and I auditioned for a small featured part. It's kind of like a featured extra role in The Current War, which was a film with Benedict Cumberbatch playing Thomas Edison, and Nicholas Hoult plays Tesla, if you've seen it. So anyway, I did that as a day player role and worked on that for a few weeks, saw how it's done with some of the big actors who are really decent. And that was really the beginning. So kind of thrown into being like a sort of a small cog in a giant wheel at Leavesden Studios. So Warner Brothers was kind of the start there, and it just got me hooked. So that was basically the genesis. Yeah.
Right. And working on these big productions as an actor, what does that teach you about making your own stuff, do you think?
Oh, so much. I mean, first of all, as you know, there's the terminologies. And it's hard because when you're doing studio films like that, there's just so much going on. So you're just trying to absorb all that knowledge. But for me, I was kind of just absorbing it from Alfonso, the director, what he wanted as like a rookie at that time. And also just from people like Benedict and other actors, they're phenomenal actors. Just seeing like them talking about eyeline and all that stuff, it allows you to piece together like the picture, if you will, for how to make the DOP's life easier. So that was the big takeaway. And it's humbling. Like it's so humbling when you go, like whether you're playing for a big team in sport or going onto a big sort of center stage as a small piece, you definitely do like, you get humbled and you learn a lot about respect and just how the machine works. So it was definitely thrown into the deep end, but in a manageable sense. So definitely, I would say the terminology and just being grateful, because like when you're on those, you know how much goes into trying to get any film made, whether it's a short film, student film, through to a feature. So it definitely, it forges you to really like see that is actually the celebration, if you will, when you're in front of the camera or behind it, if that's what you do. So yeah.
Yeah, agree. And I think if you're lucky enough to get to work on a big production or even go and set visit, you do sort of, your blinkers come off and you see how many people there are involved in the filmmaking process. And like you say, that going in with that humble mindset is useful as well, because you want to soak it all up. You don't want to be in the corner chatting when you could be sort of watching people and picking up little tips, and just even like on-set protocols, that kind of stuff. So let's talk about. So you've appeared in a number of films. Then you've gone on to start writing, directing your own stuff, and then the proof of concept you sent me was for Ascension. So talk to me about what that is. Talk to me about it. Tell me about it.
We could talk about it for hours. It's this to give a tidbit to people listening. When you are trying to do like a multi-layered storyline, and then not like touting our team for being like super original, but like when you're doing a multi-layered thing and you're trying to explain the storyline to people, to producers or showrunners, it's super hard. So I can talk about that. But yeah, basically, long story cut short, again, because we don't have all the time in the world. But I was basically doing a seminar back in 2020 about the blockchain and how it could influence art and film. I was just a guest speaker like I am today. And one person who's in the audience who's listening was a really amazing screenwriter. So Jared, who's now my producing partner, basically was like, hey, you and I speak the same language. We're into this. I don't like the term new age, but like, very spiritual stories kind of cut from the cloth of Avatar and Dune, like big worlds, but are kind of grounded in some approach. So yeah, he sent me the TV series pilot and the deck and the Bible, and I was hooked. And I was like, let's meet. He was pitching to Bob Zemeckis at the time, which was fantastic. And we were pitching to Zendaya's team and other people. And we can go into that. But basically, we were going big. We were trying to pitch Ascension, which is basically, it's based on our real life in this world, which is a pretty mad, life experience with, insane sort of military powers and military industrial complex stuff that's very much in the zeitgeist, with declassified files. But we wanted to do it in a character driven way. So basically, Ascension, the genesis was there's this prophecy child who has he is activated strands of DNA, which give him these psychic abilities. And he's kind of an enigma. Like people at school think he's autistic and weird when he's actually a bit of a genius. And he's based in Australia at that time. So the series had characters in Australia, Tokyo, Scotland, of course, coming from my side, and California. So very much had like a hero's element to it, if you remember that series, but done in a way that's really relatable, because we're massive sci-fi fans, Jared and myself, but we didn't want to do something that's like a spectacle film, like a 2012 or like we were much more inspired by films like Arrival, which had symbols and different modalities. So it's a whole complex storyline, but in a nutshell, it's a story of starseeds, like black sheep in society who are just ordinary people on the surface world, but actually deep down, they're incredibly gifted, somewhat metaphysically, but without going full Marvel, if you get me. So yeah, that's basically it in a nutshell. So the series, just to go to what you said, was the plan A. Plan A was to pitch to a Netflix, to an HBO, ideally HBO or Apple, and see if there was interest. And we got a lot of movement in 4 years. But as of last year, I was like, you know what? Let's, you know the drill. Let's shoot this. Let's show our vision in a short film capacity, and let's put it in festivals, which we're literally doing as we speak. And so we shot it in Devon, in the country, with remote crews. And I just adapted a script with Jared in a short format, and then that was my directorial debut with my other producing partner. So it was an ordeal, but it was well worth filming it.
Right. Okay. So there's a lot of different strands there I want to pick up on. The first one that so there's loads that interest me. The one that people always want to know is, where do you get the money from to make the proof of concept?
From myself. So this is if anyone's watching this and because I'm there with you, and I know you probably are too, the chicken and egg, when you're like pitching to producers, showrunners, or heads of studio, they all want to know if you have dev finance, or they're all looking for something very different. They might be like, we got a lot of feedback that was from huge directors in the UK, probably shouldn't mention them, but they were like, this is fantastic, this world building is huge, but we have something similar. And me being me, I'd just be like, it's not, it's just in the same genre, right? Mm-hmm. So it's sci-fi. So anyway, to answer your question, it was all through sort of a humbling experience in 2019 where I was like many people in this world in overdrafts, trying to be a working actor, making enough money in London was just very, very tough. So I said, look, I'm going to go really into investment strategy. So I got into gold, then I got into crypto, thank God, because gold would take centuries to make a fair amount of money. So I really did the 10,000 hour rule within the blockchain, how it could make film better to do with distribution, which we can talk about. But I put in about $2,000, and obviously not financial advice, but I turned it into about 800,000 pounds within, because happened to be a nice bull run, so everything just went up in value, and I just got really into it. I treated it like a day job, like I was a morning trader and an afternoon filmmaker, and that allowed me to be like, hey, now I have 100,000 to put into 3 or 4 projects on my slate, and I can create amazing decks. But in this case, for Ascension, and the short's called The Crystal Gene, I just put it into that budget. And for a short, it was a beefy budget, but I wanted, as you've seen, the spectacle, our VFX was done properly. We had some big actors. So yeah, it was all personally financed without any studio.
Right. So, and is that so? I can feel the ears pricking up now. The investment thing, blockchain, all that stuff I don't know anything about. Is that a sustainable way of raising finance? Do you think, would you do that again? Is it something people can learn, or is it something you have to invest all that time in? Are you going to be doing it again? Talk to me about that.
It's a great question. And it is, like, full disclosure, somewhat the Wild West, but I would think people overhype the fear of the industry, because there's crazy things going on in regulated industries in the stock market, for example. But what I would say with crypto, and I've taught hundreds of people, mostly friends and family, just to onboard them, right, to get them to know how to use what a wallet is and the different types of security protocols. You're gonna have to dive deep into it. It's like with film. You can't just be a part-timer. You've got to be all in. So with crypto, like, it does require learning terminology that can be hard for some. I don't think it's as technical as people think. It's like, think about us on a daily basis as filmmakers. We're using Canva, we're using Premiere Pro, we're using all these different softwares. Crypto is just like that. You just have to learn an app. You need to find out what a good coin is that actually has some sort of some hype around it, has some lore. So like a narrative, for example, being AI right now, which I'm not massively into, ironically. But so to go into that, like, I don't want to go too much deep into what I invest in, because some of them were in the more high risk landscapes of memes and other stuff and NFTs. But a lot of it, 99% of it is scams. So you do have to be fully into it and have a thesis of why it's got some value. And the beauty of it was, though, Jim, is like, you can make a lot of money from little. So I always talk about the asymmetric payoff. For example, I put in £2,000 of overdraft, thank you RBS, and then on the return, I along the way had these milestones of £10,000 profit and so on, and it just matured. So I took my time, but it only took about 18 months, maybe 12 to 18 months to make that. But it's not for everyone. Like, some people I've taught, friends and family, they freak out. It's just too much. So what I would say is, put money in and think you're going to lose it, so you're not so emotionally connected to it. But I'm a cowboy. Like, that's not a literal cowboy. That's just how I am. A contrarian in films I like to make. I am a contrarian. I'm not into, like, I'm that generation. I'm just turned 34. I'm that generation where I'm not gonna, like, I don't have 4 houses. I have to take the risk, because the boomers and stuff, they have all these, amazing assets, and they've worked hard. In this day and age, from my age group down, you're kind of forced to take a risk. And film and crypto is high risk, high reward, as you know.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. So the takeaways from that is, be prepared to lose your money.
Correct.
It's really risky, but there's potentially big returns on it if you get
Correct.
it right.
But what I would say is, even though that sounds super intense, and it somewhat is, it's been the most freeing experience of my life. But you could call it ADHD, but I'm fully into that, because I want to understand what gives it value. This world is crazy for like what people following narratives and trends. I do that somewhat to see where the energies behind which token or which movie. It's great to know. So you somewhat become sort of a decoder of social phenomena. You can kind of see where the puck is going. But I would say to that, on the legit side, more legit, less risk. Francis Coppola's son just launched Decentralized Pictures, I think last year. I can submit my short film, and if it gets upvoted by the community, they actually fund it with Steven Soderbergh, I believe. So there are projects within there that have huge credibility. It's not all just meme coins.
Yeah. Very interesting stuff. So you got the money, you shot the proof of concept. So actually, let's rewind to before you had that proof of concept, getting those meetings with executives at the big streamers. How do you do that if you've not got all this back catalogue to kind of prop yourself up with? How do you get into those meetings in the first place?
Great question. I am totally obsessed with network, first of all. So there's a lot of people, like, as you know, in London and in the UK that are very supportive. But fundamentally, getting into those rooms is one of the hardest things. If I get a response still to this day from a fairly busy person on an email, I'm like, this is a small win. So a lot of it, I've done cold emails and stuff, which again, it's a low percentile for how that translates. I've tried Virtual Pitch, which was that, website I'm sure you know about. But to be honest with you, the hit rate was so minimal. I think it's a great platform that you can pitch a project in a concise manner, and then they have to respond to you within 4 days, I believe. So I only got a few meetings there. But to be honest with you, it was from my network in London, like meeting directors and people that are, kind of at my level, or a bit above. I'm sure people have talked about this before. If you shoot for, Francis Coppola or something like that, it's pretty hard, because again, like, I'm very honest with where I am. Like, I'm a first-time director, for a proof of concept. Obviously, I've done quite a lot of acting, but by no means a big actor. So to answer your question, a lot of it was from people opening doors. Like, I'll give an example. An amazing near-blind director, Adam, who's a good dear friend. He's directed a few feature films, and him and I just got on so well personally. We clicked, and he basically was like, "Hey, there's this big producer in LA who I think you'd connect with. He's the producer of like Last Samurai, Jumanji, Wheel of Time. So he's still doing all the Jumanjis." And it was like, you need to meet him. So that's how that came about. It was through an honest friendship with Adam, and he just happened to not gatekeep that contact. So yeah, I'd say that's the most valuable for sure.
Right.
And just loyalty to your friends. Like Simon, for example, one of my closing producing partners, Simon K. We did a film, a crazy, horror fantasy film back in 2018 in the Highlands of Scotland. And, that was by no means, I was acting in it, but that was how we met. And him and I just speaking pretty much every day and forging this professional relationship and friendship. He then came back to me and opened the door in a James McAvoy film, a feature film that he just wrapped, I think, in January. So it was almost like showing loyalty and just being a very high integrity person. It comes back with good karma, with that relationship. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. And I think there is this game that happens in the micro low budget field, which is this zero sum thinking where people worry that if I give this thing away to this person, they're going to go off and they're going to make it, they're going to shoot off and make it. I've got to keep all my cards close to my chest.
Yeah.
Don't tell them about things. Don't show them things. I can't show my script to anyone. I can't show this to anyone just in case they steal it. And unfortunately, all that does is it prevents you from moving and expanding your network. And you can tell, I don't know about you, but I can tell pretty soon into a conversation if I'm going to gel with someone and if that's going to be a relationship that's going to carry on, or if it's someone I'm just like, we're not really on the right wavelength, or I get the feeling you're just pumping me for information before you move on to your next victim.
Exactly. Getting leads out of you and then sort of going, film is a ruthless game sometimes, but when you do find that tribe of people that, like you said, when you do more meetings and stuff and, you become more experienced, you can really decode and break down people and see their true intentions. But yeah, it's dicey at times.
Yes, but then the other side to that is if you meet someone you genuinely connect with and you like, then you want to help them succeed. You want to see them do well, and they pop into your mind when an opportunity pops up.
Exactly. Yeah.
So you talked about your past working in London and how that's kind of helped you with pitching, stuff like that. So give
Yeah.
me your tips for pitching. You're in a room with somebody. What are your top tips for kind of explaining your idea and selling it?
Yeah. Okay. So to touch on that very quickly with London, it was ruthless. It was very much the directors and the CEOs would do the sales training. So we had this thing called the director's pitch. So for example, I was doing headhunting, working a lot with Capgemini, Deloitte, some of the big 5 or 6. God, I've been out the game a while in consulting. So you would have to convince the two basically leads of the company who were like virtuosos in the game of sales, and they would shoot you down. They would pick holes in every aspect of your pitch. So I do bring that to film, but I did learn from other podcasts as well through Jerry Bruckheimer's Right Hand Lady to keep it simple. Because what I found with Ascension and with the Crystal Gene was people would ask us what it's about, and it would get very deep and multidimensional in the lore. It's almost like trying to explain Lord of the Rings. It can get really confusing. So my tip was lead with the genre, right? So for example, I'd be like, the Crystal Gene is a grounded sci-fi drama and it's character driven. And then I would go into like maybe the log line. So just basically like the woman on the mission sort of orientation. So people know, the kind of the roadmap, if you will. And then from there, I like to distinguish like a unique aspect to it, of it being based on declassified documents, why it's important to today, like because we have all these wars, the military industrial complex is profiteering off these wars, and people are getting really emotional about this. So it's kind of explaining where the audience is and how engaged they are to buy tickets to see this in the cinema. So I do try and not go too deep. When I've gone too deep into story, and I'm still perfecting this, you can see their eyeballs just go. So genre, logline, and then a bit around like why it's commercial, I guess, and different. I'm all about unique stories. Yeah, full stop.
Yeah, the part that often gets missed is that audience part. So people have a really good idea, really good pitch, but there's no end bit, which is, and who's going to actually watch it?
Exactly.
And that's an interesting one that you mentioned. Is this? Well, I've got to look at the truth-seeking audience. Is what you put in your email,
right.
Which I sort of I'm aware of it, but I didn't realise it had that title, and and Starseed as well as part of something that people are searching. So tell me about that audience. Who are they, and what are they looking for?
I'm so glad you asked, because truth-seeking, by the way, is a broader sort of handle, if you will, for that audience. Like truth-seeking can be like, we've seen so many films that expose truths in child trafficking and all different areas of life, environmental disasters and so on. So that's kind of a broad one that I usually don't lead with. Starseed, to break that down, is basically a massive, it sounds very culty, but it's a movement of people that are not religiously controlled. So they don't believe in specific doctrines like you would see in other organized religions. So it's the new age spiritual space. And what starseed means, and I usually give a definition in my pitch. And the reason why I use it is because it really is a massive growing phenomena, and it's a niche. Like I want to create films to my type of people, and that's the starseeds. So starseed is basically people that believe in otherworldly life. So they believe in aspects of their higher self or in other aspects of their soul on a different planet or in a different dimension, right? So obviously that touches on ufology, which I'm very into, but I feel like that is a dicey area. I used to work a bit in ufology documentaries, and it can get very political. So that's what Starseed is. It's basically people that believe that we have these multidimensional aspects of our physical bodies, our strands of our DNA that once activated, through being a better person, through these general tenets, they can become more self-actualized and more, I don't want to say powerful, but more gifted, whether it's with your intellect. I consider Leo da Vinci a starseed, for example, people who are Renaissance men and women and well ahead of their time. Nikola Tesla is the best example, who I'm obsessed with, of course.
Right. Okay, I think I'm following you with that.
I
And
hope
I'm
you are.
just just to circle back to the truth seeking thing. So I guess that could be anyone from somebody who's sort of suspicious of the government right the
Correct.
way through to people who are interested in UFOs and Bigfoot. So it's kind of
Correct.
like this big strand of that goes from all the way here just to kind of here. But that's interesting that that is an audience, and I have seen that with micro budget stuff. You know, the Bigfoot movies do really well. Alien stuff, UFO stuff, documentaries, that kind of stuff. There's definitely
Sure.
a big appetite for that.
Yeah, and it
Um,
touches on sci-fi. I mean, look at Spielberg is doing UFO documentary. I think it's
mm,
coming out soon, and he's all his films like have ET and all those things. Even though it's more Hollywoodized, like it touches sci-fi, and truth seekers are very emotional. Like I say that from my experience. When you go through those awakenings, if you will, you want to see films that represent that, and you will. I know people that did it for a controversial film like Sound of Freedom. They went,
mm,
there's, as you know, it was 4 walls in the UK. There's only a few cinemas like within like 3 hour drive. People will drive that distance to go and watch that film. That's what I
yeah,
want to tap into. Yeah.
yeah. I haven't seen that yet. I think it's on Prime at the moment,
I
so I
haven't seen
do.
it. Yeah, I know. I
Yeah, I
haven't
want
seen
to
it
check it
either.
out and see because that was a big thing, wasn't it?
It was,
At the
I mean, it
time.
overtook Indiana Jones, and it
Mm,
didn't even have a global release. But I can talk about. I mean, I'm very open book. Like I looked into Angel Studios, and if that was a route for us, and without bashing them, they're doing like really good content. It was
mm,
just too. It was too much of a Christian ideology that clashed with, for example, when you watch the Crystal Gene, which is the proof of concept for Ascension, you see like it mentions the Native Americans, it mentions the Celts, being my sort of my lineage. It mentions the Essenes, which are a tribe of splinter off Jesus. So it's very inclusive, because we're motivated by that, not because we got these sort of agendas, if you will.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. And with that, so you've done your proof of concept. You're going for the festivals. Do you think you'll come to a stage where you're just like, right, we can't find a home for it. We're just going to raise the money ourselves, shoot it, and sell it. Is that your backup plan, or are you just going to keep trying to find a home for it?
You know your stuff. Yeah, we have a plan A, B, and C.
Yeah.
So plan A. Everyone's got a plan until you get punched in the face, as Tyson used to say. Plan A is the series. So my partner, my producing partner, is very big on series. I'm more of a feature guy myself. So series is so hard because you've got to, for sci-fi, people see it as a giant budget, right, or a big dollar sign that comes with the budget. So ideally, it would be Apple or HBO. But plan B would be to do the feature version in the UK. So I'm currently adapting the film to be around characters, kind of like the Da Vinci Code that migrates from where I am. I'm based not too far from, say, Avebury, through the Stone Circles, through London, all the way up to Scotland. So almost in that dynamic. So that's plan B. We do already. I can't give away too much because I don't want to jinx it, but we already have a head of a studio in the UK that's very interested in making that as a feature. But the caveat, as you know, is the package. So getting the right A-listers, because they're not on Netflix, they're big, but they're not like, they can't just put unknowns in. They need 2 A-listers and a director. So that's where she was like to me, you're obviously a talented director, but you're a newer director. Would you be open to finding one that's more proven in sci-fi? And I'm very down for that. So that's plan B. Plan C is, of course, the more and more sort of indie finance route of, again, shooting it as a feature and raising money privately, which I'm very into. I try and pitch a lot to high net worth people, but it's a tough game,
Yeah.
I don't know
Yeah.
what's tougher, high net worth money or film money. It's like,
Yeah, it equally has its challenges, but it's good that I think the mistake some people make is they put all their eggs in one basket and they just, and this can happen even with film festivals. People focus on one thing so
yeah,
much, and then
yeah,
when that thing fails, it
crush.
really feels like the whole world's collapsed. Whereas, like you say, for me, in the past, I've done exactly what you're doing, and I've always had in the back of my mind, right, if no one wants it, I've got to make this thing.
Mhm.
And I'll bloody do it myself if no one wants to buy it.
That's
Um,
the spirit.
yeah,
That's the
so
thing.
you've got to do that. But I can. It's funny. now you've talked about that truth-seeking audience, the star seed thing. I can totally see your trailer. I can see why people would. There'd be little tidbits in the trailer of the things that you want to discover and find out, and I can just see why people would get on and watch it. And I could also see why it would probably do well on streaming, advertising-based streaming, because you need to see the whole thing to understand how it all fits together. So you've got a good pitch there, good sales pitch, and I'm sure it'll do well.
Thank you for the kind words. That means a lot.
So the other thing I wanted to touch on was exec producing James McAvoy's directorial debut. So we hear that term a lot, exec producing. Tell me what that means from your side. Is that you throwing a bit of money at it? How much have you been involved?
Yeah, so it came about from Schemin. So Schemin and I, we've always just been so connected with our slates, and we obviously did that film I mentioned in the Highlands, Shadowland, and basically, we just have this brotherhood, and me being in London, him being in Edinburgh at that time, he just went really deep into trying to find a story, and he found the story based on these two rappers, which is a real story, of course, which I think there was a few Vice documentaries on, which is hilarious. So he was the champion with one other producer to source the book rights for that, or the adaptation, film rights. And he worked on that for 3 years, getting that packaged, and they got it. They did all the hard work with getting it to McAvoy's reps. And they were like, they just so happened, the stars aligned, and James was like wanting to do a very Scottish film, like a rags to riches sort of grassroots film. And that was what they did. Where I came in was they needed help with some gap finance, and where they needed help with some post, with specifics to music, getting like rappers to potentially do the soundtrack and other things, which is about as much as I can speak to now. So to be honest with you, it was nice for me to be involved, but to not be the champion of that story, of that film, because I've been doing it with Ascension and a few other projects we haven't talked about. So yeah, it was very nice as a Scotsman as well to work with James, was huge. And this story is fantastic. It's hilarious and epic. So yeah, I was kind of more hands off, to be honest with you. And the gap finance, it's still tough, because you're having to liaise with Studio Canal, Bankside, all these different players. But, by that time, Simon and I just have such a strong affinity and connection. He also needed someone in his camp as well. So yeah, it was a more chilled exec producer role, I should say.
Yeah, but it looks good on the CV, doesn't it? It's a nice one to have to pull out your back pocket when you're pitching, I imagine.
It is. It's a door opener. Like people do. I mean, keep it real here. Like people respond to your emails, and especially, being a younger, I don't consider myself young, but younger filmmaker, people get nervous. So people are very big on credits, and I was on set and around it, so you do get that experience as well. I was a part of many different areas, but the thing I'm big on is not getting sort of packaged as just one thing. Like, how it is as an indie filmmaker, you tend to like, I'm a writer, I'm an actor, now a director, but I'm patient with that. So I don't want to be seen as like the business side of film, but sometimes you've got to go where the opportunities are. So it's definitely helped. And who knows, maybe, open many doors for Scottish stories. That's what I'm looking to do next, is some indie Scottish stories as well.
Nice.
Yeah.
So looking back now on your time in filmmaking, what's the thing that you wish you knew when you started?
Ooh, wow. Yeah, is to properly screen people. And I'm talking about, like, going back to what you said about really sussing into people, what are they showing you, not telling you, because whether, for me as a director, hiring actors, you've got to see through every actor wants the role. You got to see, like, could there be some problem areas? What's their character? But even more intensely is producing. As you know, like, I'm pretty sure you produce with your wife, right?
Yeah.
Right. And I collaborate with my fiance as well for like wardrobe and set design and all that, because you need to have a tribe. And to go with that, screening people, is every meeting can go well when you sit and have a coffee or a beer or dinner. Everyone's pretty jovial, you get on well, but you've got to look beyond that. And I've certain tools that I've learned to use, which are more irregular, but to be honest with you, when I've just like, oh, this is great, we get swept up in the story and you start producing, and then you realize they're actually a bit of a problem child in certain areas, and not to character assassinate anyone, but it's such a ruthless game that like, it's like being in a fight. Like when you have someone who's truly taken some punches and they're still, very respectful of you and they're in your corner, that is true character, and I think that can be an issue sometimes when you jump into a film with someone and then it becomes a nightmare. So really tapping into what are their intentions and their drivers, and are they good people? It's really hard. It's like $1 million question, isn't it?
It is. And it's also, there's two parts to that. One is knowing when to cut that relationship off. If it isn't beneficial and it's not working and it's unharmonious and there's too much conflict, is just having the guts to do the second part, which is separate the person from the project, because you can get so attached to something creatively that and this can happen with actors, it can happen with producers, is that you're so attached to it creatively that you're blind to all of the problems the person is causing you. So it can be hard sometimes to cut that. Feels like you're cutting a limb off, but
exactly.
Man, it feels good once you've done it, but it's difficult to let go sometimes.
Exactly, especially if they're a bit higher up in the food chain. I hate talking like this, but it's kind of a reality that they're kind of dangling the carrot as well. So you're like, oh, but they could open this door, and you kind of tolerate that nonsense. But just realizing that, getting people at your level that have your back, and I have a brilliant tribe of British filmmakers now that I just consider brothers and sisters. And I know even if times got hard, which they always do with films or series, you can expect them to act with candor, because that's the thing that, like you said, when you put all your eggs in one basket, and then you're attached to these people contractually and stuff, it's like it's almost too late, and that's the hard part.
The other part is, unfortunately, as a producer, you've got to eat a lot of dog shit sandwiches, and you've got to.
You should get people saying that.
Yeah, you've got. Well, you do. And the amount of times I've been in a situation where, if I reacted emotionally, the film wouldn't have got made, or that whole day would have been a write-off. And sometimes, unfortunately, you just have to eat the sandwich and smile through it, just to get the bloody thing finished and get it over the line. And you can't be too emotional yourself when it comes to those moments, otherwise you just create problems for yourself.
Exactly.
You're taking me to a dark place.
I'm sorry. It's just a hard truth. I like to keep it light and inspirational, but that is a big takeaway. For whether you're an actor, VFX person, whatever it is, it's really hard, because a lot of people, they show such interest. They're like, yes, this script's amazing, or, you're amazing. And then you hear nothing from them sometimes. Or, I've had that. People have the best meeting, and in their words, they're like, let's do this. And 2 years go by, they haven't responded. Then they come back. So it's for me, it's like, I don't take it super personally, because I know my films won't be for everyone or my character, but I think humans are good at sort of guising certain things, but there are some wonderful people out there too. So it's not all doom.
There we go. He ended with a positive. I love it.
Yeah.
So then I'll just finish with one fun question. Is if you could reboot or remake any film or franchise, what would you pick?
Oh, I was actually doing a list of this 2 days ago.
Oh, nice. Okay.
Yeah. Oh my days. I mean, I would have said Lord of the Rings, but then Prime butchered that one. So let me think. I would have to say, I would love to take a crack at Contact or Avatar. Yeah.
Avatar, that's a big one to
Yeah.
Well, why do you want to go at that? It's doing all right, isn't it? What would you do different?
Yeah, I think I took that to high level, but Jim is like an inspiration of mine, Jim Cameron. And Avatar, it's not for everyone. Again, like the second one wasn't for everyone. I just adore them. I think as an actor, I love motion capture. I've never had the chance to do it, but from what I've seen, like it's just that 360 environment of acting and just being fully there. So there's that. But Avatar, it's just the whole world. It just blows my mind. But I'm not saying I could come in and be like, hey, Jim, this is what you should do.
Fix it for him.
Yeah.
He's doing all right.
Yeah.
And the other one, Contact.
Yes.
The thing about Contact is, love it as a movie right till that last scene. Spoiler alert. Because what I don't, it's almost, for me anyway, you correct me if you've got a different opinion on this. Love it, love all this is how it works, this is how we're going to get there, whatever. And then boom, it's the dad and it's talking to someone you love rather than the alien. I want to meet the alien. I want to, do you know what I mean? I want to, that's what I want.
The
That's
payoff.
what's wrong with it. I want the payoff, and I didn't get it with that film. So do you feel the same way, or are you happy with that ending?
I'm with you 110%. Like we love, I mean, again, my producing partner, Jared, and I love Jodie Foster. We just love the acting, the whole religion versus science aspect. And it's very grounded. That's what we want to do. We don't want to go full Star Wars with what we're doing with Ascension. But I am with you 100%. Like going to that amazing planet and that beautiful beach, for the time, the VFX was unreal. Like Bob Zemeckis is like a legend in that field, as we know. I was like, come on, there's got to be like these mystical beings that you meet and they share this knowledge or a future timeline of Earth, like a cautionary warning or something deep, you know, or about spirituality, which McConaughey's character plays into in a more sort of Christian lens. So yes, I agree with you. I would have taken the gloves off. Yeah.
But it probably, to be fair, it probably would have got laughed at if that had happened in that time. Because what would happen? The computer effects were good, but probably weren't good enough.
Sure.
It would have been, and then people would have just focused on the aliens. So I get why they did it, but I did feel a little bit robbed when I got to that scene.
I'm totally with you. It's so good to like break down films like this because they are wonderful and it's hard for them to nail it every step of the way. But some people say that about Avatar, as you know, like, oh, it's a rip-off Fern Gully or Pocahontas. Is like everyone has an opinion, but with that, you know, I just think the whole like taking so long to develop the technology and then to deliver on such an epic story that has so many relatable tenets to our Earth existence is mind-blowing. But I'm not all sci-fi. I love thrillers. I love like mystery whodunit films. So there are loads. 7 would be fun. Yeah, it's darker though.
Thanks for listening to this week's episode. I've got another great episode for you that relates to this one. If you get the chance, check out Packaging Your Film for Investors with Rosa Camero. It's a really good in-depth chat about the things you can do and the things you can put in place to get the best package available to show investors and get your film funded. Please do subscribe to the Honest Filmmaker podcast for more interesting chats with creatives.